that you do have, or any meetings that we do have as a district that are not professional development, they are not recorded, okay? And I always ask first before I enable that feature. So I'm going to present now. And I'm going to jump over here to directions that I made specifically for the counselors, and I will present my screen to you, and then I'm going to walk you through every step of the process. Okay, so I just want to touch base and talk about the why we have been doing asynchronous lessons versus synchronous lessons as a district, just in case you have questions from students or from parents, then at least you know the background as to why this decision has been made. So over the course of the this entire time, even before we were out of school, we were looking at how we were going to offer learning experiences to students. We took into consideration student populations, Wi-Fi access, Chromebook access. We tried to get devices to every student in grades 2 through 12, but over the course of time, devices tend to break down and accidents happen. So we've set up ways for students to receive loaners. Problem with that is that while typically our loaner fleet would stay pretty consistent, because as we got something in that was needed to be repaired, we sent it out, it got repaired if we couldn't do it ourselves in-house. And right now, because of all this, there really isn't the company that we would normally send it to is not available to service the devices that we can. So we're going to see over the next couple of weeks that our fleet for loaners is diminishing. So that was one concern that we thought about. The other concerns are just the various tools that are out there for online meetings. I'm sure most of you have heard some of the horror stories that school districts and municipalities have had using Zoom and having Zoom bombing. We've been very aware of the issues regarding HIB and also FERPA regulations. So we've tested as a technology department a number of different options, and over the course of the past few weeks, or even the past month, both Google and Zoom have made adjustments that, we had to carefully weigh what we were most comfortable with as a district. And I'm confident to say now that if we all follow the guidelines that we have for setting up meetings, depending on our roles as a counselor, a teacher in preschool to 2, a teacher in grades 3 through 12, or an OT, PT, or speech teacher, that we have different guidelines that we've created to try to make sure that all of these experiences are as seamless as possible. That being said, there's always, there's always the potential for technology issues, Wi-Fi not being super strong, and things like that. So we'll work through that together. So we've decided as a district that we are not doing synchronous learning with the exception of OT, PT, and speech, because that is required by law. That was signed in by the governor about, oh gosh, probably it feels like a year ago, but it was probably only a few months ago. A few weeks ago, gosh. So anyway, we are offering by law OT, PT, and speech live sessions for learning, but all of our other learning is done asynchronously, which means that students can access the content and the assessments at any point whenever they have the access and the ability to do so. Now, the meetings that we're offering, both, sorry, let me just shut off my ringer here. The meetings that we're offering to students with their teachers, so they're going to be class meetings or office hours. Those are really just for check-ins for students to have the ability to connect with their teachers, connect with their classmates, basically do really on a human level, check in, how are you, and try to really just get that sense of community back through Google Meets. And the other way that it will be used by teachers is for them to be able to hold office hours so that students can ask questions about the learning experiences that they're having, and maybe ask for some additional guidance and support during those times, or maybe just to kind of just review something that's already been implemented as a learning experience. So that's really it, though. It's not going to replace the lessons that teachers are doing. They may need to review something based on a question, but that's pretty much it. Also know that the technology staff and I, and any PD that we're doing, we've tested these tools and we are sure that they are compatible with both student and staff devices, because anything that we're teaching, we want to be able to be used as a resource moving forward. So we're not offering PD in anything that we don't think will be sustainable. So we're not hopping on these free fads right now with technology tools. Every company out there seems to be offering stuff for free, but we're being very careful about what we select to offer as PD, because we don't want to waste anyone's time with learning a tool now that we can't sustain or support moving forward. Now, I did, for the next item, the opt-in and opt-out data, I did share the opt-out data with the building principals. And we sent out 7 surveys over the course of about a week and a half. And parents received the survey either by phone, and they had to select 1 to opt in or 2 to opt out, or they had to select to opt in or out through an email with a web-based form. So we collected all that data. We told anyone who received the last 2 surveys that if they didn't opt in by this past Sunday at 9:00 p.m. when the survey ended, that those students were going to be considered opt-in. So I shared the opt-out data with the principals. They're communicating that out to staff members to have them reach out to anyone that's on the opt-out list and just try to explain to them how, as a teacher, they'll be using Google Meets for office hours or class meetings, and explain to them the importance of their child participating so that they're not missing out on that community experience with the rest of their classmates and their teacher. I believe that there are probably a number of parents who had heard those Zoom bombing issues in the news and had kind of like a knee-jerk reaction that they didn't want their children to participate because they didn't want them to potentially be exposed to anything. But I think that the fact that we're using Google Meets, the fact that we've tested it in all these different ways, and the fact that we've scaffolded the directions depending on your role as a staff member in the district, I feel confident that we are we're doing the best we can to safeguard these learning environments and these online meeting spaces. So if you have a student that is on the opt-out list, there may be a point in the very near future that your teacher may reach out to you just for support because they have not convinced the parent. And then maybe if you have a connection with the parent and the student, maybe you can help support them in that endeavor. The other thing that I want to mention with that, and I did confirm this with Dr. McDonald before, and she will join us when she's done with her current meeting. Any student that has an IEP that requires counseling services, even if they're on the opt-out list, can still receive services. Okay, so that would mean that they're not able to participate in the class meetings and office hours, but they can still receive counseling services through the school. So if it's not in their IEP and they're on the opt-out list, again, we would just encourage those staff members to reach out to those families and explain the use of this and the importance of this, so that we can provide these options to students and families. So I'm going to go over the student and staff or the guidelines really for Google Meets. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't know if you've seen this or not, but it is linked in the directions that I will share with you after this meeting. And I just want to go over a couple of things that you want to consider before going online now for your counseling sessions. Now, teachers are creating their own guidelines based on this, and we're asking them to do it by the end of the week. Yours are going to be a little bit more personalized. So because they're typically going to be one-on-one sessions, or maybe you might have some small groups. So I think that so I'm not going to go too deeply into it, because there are different concerns that we would have for larger groups as opposed to just one-on-one. For example, something for you to think about, will you have students share their video? So do you want the ability to be able to see the students as well, or is, just the icon and their audio enough for you? And then you would just have to decide how you want to move forward with that. How will students talk during the meeting? Since it's typically going to be a one-on-one session, then you are going to have them, their microphones will have to be enabled so that you can have a conversation with one another. You don't have to worry about calling on students, because it's going to be a small group. So some of this information are just, generic guidelines that are, really mandatory guidelines for the district, but apply to everyone. So this information will also go out in directions to parents and students, hopefully by tomorrow afternoon. So one of the things that we want to just remind everyone of is to make sure that your background is free of distractions. That doesn't mean that you have to be by a blank wall. I'm not. My plants are in the background. They're growing, but they're not moving, so they're not too much of a distraction, I hope. But just make sure, if you have pictures behind you or any identifiable information that you wouldn't want students to see, that you're in an area where those are not seen. Just be mindful. This is important for you guys, that the meeting can be listened to or seen by other people in the student's home. We can't guarantee that every student has a private space to do this. So especially for your sessions, I think it would be a good idea to remind students that they should have like earbuds or a headset, so that they can interact with you, and that everything isn't broadcast throughout the house. But we can't guarantee that that's the case. So just be aware that anything that you say can be heard, and anything that can be seen can also be seen by somebody else in the house. There's a link here to the FERPA rules to discussing online meetings, and we've already spoken about the opt-out guidelines. So one of the things that's important to remember is not to share your screen if you have windows open that aren't related to the class. So I've said this in the other PD sessions before. If you have, is it okay for you to watch Netflix on your computer at home, your district-owned computer at home? Absolutely, that's fine. Just not during working hours, because we want to make sure that we're available for our students. But if you had that open on a tab, you would just want to make sure that you have that tab closed. Not only do we want to reduce the number of distractions, we want to make sure that we don't have any tabs open that may have sensitive information that are specific to other students, because if we accidentally click on the wrong link, the wrong tab, then that would be visible to students. So those are some things that you want to keep in mind. In addition to the fact that you will see reduced performance of your Meet. There might be a lag in audio or video, depending on how much you have running on your computer at once. So the more tabs we have open, the harder our computer is working to try to keep up with the virtual meeting, as well as if you had any other applications open, like Word documents, PowerPoints, and things like that. So you want to make sure that you close out everything. And when I talk about closing out, I just wanted to indicate this. So if I wanted to close my Chrome browser, if I just click on this X here, it doesn't actually close the browser. It just closes the window. So then that means it's still running in the background. So if we look over here, you can see that this little dot that I have here, that means that that's running. I don't have that dot next to anything else, so I know everything else is closed because I checked that before I got on this meeting, because I wanted to make sure that there was no lagging on my end. The way to close down any open application is to physically go up to the top and click on the name of the application and choose quit, or to choose Command Q, I'm sorry, or Control Q on your keyboard to completely shut down that application. Also, if you haven't shut down your computer in a number of days, You might want to make sure, you need to make sure you're doing that regularly just to give your computer a little bit of a break, even if it goes to sleep at night. Okay, moving on. This one is really important. Do not share meeting IDs publicly, and we are going to get into that specifically in a moment or two. Once again, do not record sessions, and make sure students know that that the session is not recorded. We've restricted the ability for any student to record a session through Google Meets. So while I went over here before down to my settings and I chose to record this session, students do not have that ability. You do as a staff member, but we're asking everyone to not record any Google Meets unless it's an official PD that we're offering through the district so that we can use that for training moving forward. Okay, let me jump back here real quick. And now, just as a side note, okay, even though students can't record through the Meet, that doesn't mean that they couldn't have a phone open and record the session too. So just remind them prior to the start of the meeting that they're not to use any devices at all to record the session, and you are not using any devices to record the session either. And then, as usual, all student code of conduct and HIB requirements still apply. This is linked in the, this entire document is linked in the PD Google Slides that I'll send to you later with all of the directions. And then you just want to click here or up here to complete the form, just to say that you've reviewed the guidelines. I won't go through page 2. I'll just ask you to look at those because these are some, they're just 2 samples of etiquette and guidelines that teachers may use in their online meetings and office hours. So you may want to check them out and develop your own, but a lot of this may not pertain to you because it's more of a classroom type of approach for those guidelines. Okay, now I just want to close that tab because we do not need it any longer and come back to the agenda. And we're going to talk now about the Google Calendar invitation link versus a personal invitation. We are going to teach you today how to create personalized invitations to a Google Meet session for your students. Now, the way we have been sharing out Google Meets as staff members is we are either setting up a calendar invitation or creating the meeting and sharing that link. What that does is it leaves it open. So just as you were able to join the session prior to my joining the session, that's okay as staff members when we're trying to create a meeting space online. But we don't want students to be in any meeting space before we get into the meeting space. So if we use a calendar invitation, students can access that link at any point. They can share it out with others, and they could be doing kind of like a background sideline meeting with whoever they share it with in district. So we don't want to use that approach. We've trained the teachers that are using Google Classroom to set up a Google Classroom for their students, generate a meeting link, and then share that out with their students either as the entire class or in small groups. That helps limit the number of individuals that can be in the classroom, and it also makes sure that no one can enter the classroom before the teacher does. When considering what the meeting experience would be like for you, because your caseloads are very large, we didn't feel that it made sense for you to go through and create Google Classrooms for each individual student. It would have taken you too long and it just wouldn't have been manageable. So we came up with another safe way for you to be able to invite your students. So again, this is specifically just for the counselors. So before I move into that, I just want to check the comments just to make sure that I don't have anything I need to address yet. Oh, thank you, Tyler, for the link to the guidelines. Jennifer, thank you. We will I'm going to create a form that I can share out with you so that you'd be able to you would share that with the parent, and then they would submit their opt-in or opt-out status again, because we really want it to come from them just to make sure that we're protected. So I will do that later. You have a parent email consenting to a session. Does it cancel out the opt-in, opt-out status? So I would just ask that I would share that out with you all again, the link, and just ask the parents if they have the capability to do so, to click the link and change their opt-in or opt-out status, just as a follow-up. But if you do have the email, you know, that's a good backup if they don't respond to the new survey. What if they don't want to opt into class meetings? So they don't have to opt into class meetings, but if they have an IEP and you are required to provide them counseling services, then that supersedes their opt-in or opt-out survey. Okay, let me just go over here now, and I'm going to demonstrate to you exactly how you want to be creating your Google Meets. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new browser tab here by clicking on the plus sign. You want to make sure that you're in the Chrome browser. And when the tab opens, I'm going to type meet.google.com. Okay, so now we have this generic background. We're in meet.google.com, and I want to do this each time I'm ready to start a meeting with students. So think about this as you plan out your schedules. Be kind to yourselves and give yourselves a staggered schedule so that you're not doing what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks and going back to back to back. You need time to eat. You might need time to use the restroom. You might need time to take a phone call. You might need time to just stretch your legs and take a little breather. So consider that you want to kind of stagger your meetings whenever possible by at least 15 minutes, maybe a half hour. You know, you'll figure out a schedule that is comfortable for you. But from personal experience, please give yourself some time in between. It's going to help. So know that this process is going to start every single time. So it is 1:25, okay? Let's say, for example, I have a meeting with a student at 1:30. So it's 5 minutes before I'm ready to go. I make sure that I don't have any unnecessary tabs open. My background's looking good here. So I'm going to get ready to join or start this meeting by clicking on this plus sign. Now, we can agree on a naming convention here. But for example, right now, because I am going to invite Tyler as our test student, we call this student M student. That's the email address that we use to test. Or I could just simply call this MS. You just want to make sure that you are not using punctuation, because the naming conventions don't like punctuation. You want to make sure that you don't leave it blank, and you just want to make sure that you can identify by this meeting who should be invited. So I'm going to go and just invite MS, M student, and I'm going to click continue. Now, what this is doing is, by completing this process, this is not a live environment that anybody else can access until I begin the session. So what I'm going to do now is just so that there's no feedback, I'm going to mute yourselves. You do not have to mute yourself. I just need to do this because I'm on simultaneous meets here, and I don't want you to hear any feedback. So I'm going to click on this to just shut that off for right now, and I'm going to select join now. Now I still have a couple of minutes before the student is going to access this meeting, but I've already given the student a heads up. Okay, I've already sent them an email letting them know that we are going to have a meeting at 1:30 on Wednesday today. So when I'm ready, I simply click add people, and I'm going to type the student's email address. Just be aware that student email addresses begin with their graduation year, then first initial, full last name. They're also listed in real time if you, underneath the student's personal page, if you have any questions about what their email is. So I'm going to type in student. Okay, and now when I am ready, I click on the student name, and I get an email. It asked me to send the email right here. So even though it's not quite 1:30 yet, it's 1:28, I'm ready to go. So I'm just going to send the email now to the student. That student then has to check their email, and then they will be allowed into the meeting space. Okay, so Tyler is monitoring the student email address. So he will be going in and accepting that meeting invitation so that you could see how we are now in a meet together. So one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that right now student doesn't have their video on, and that's okay. You don't have to have, they don't have to have their video on if you don't want them to, or if they are not comfortable with it. This is something that I want you to click on once the meeting space is open, and just visually monitor it as you go, okay? You want to make sure that you and the student that you invited are who is in your meeting space at all times. The reason is that even though that link was only shared with that student could potentially forward the link to another student, and then that student could also log into this particular meeting. So while it's a contained environment until you start the meeting, if a student chooses to share the link with someone else, they could have access to it. So you just want to be mindful of that. But there's also a little chime that you can hear through your computer that will alert you if anybody else is trying to join in. And you can always just monitor and eyeball the number of people in the meet. Okay. If, for example, some student logged in and they shouldn't be logged in, you would click like Corey just logged in, and Corey should not. Thank you, Corey. Corey, you should not be in here, but I love that you did it for training purposes. Nice. Okay, so Corey just showed up, and I'm going to, bye, Corey. Our meeting's next week. Okay, and I just click that minus sign and choose to remove him, and now he should be, there he is, he's gone. Okay, thanks, Corey. That was nice. I like that. So this is just this is the way that we're going to now conduct our entire meeting, talk to the student, and then once it's done, I'm going to ask student to leave. But maybe student is having technical difficulties, or it didn't listen. Then I want to do the same thing that I just did to Corey. I want to click on this down arrow and choose to visibly remove student, choose remove again. Student will be exited. I can see that it's just me in this meeting space now. So now it is okay for me to close the meeting. Okay, so I am going to close this now because I know I'm the last person here, and I'm going to click on this tab to close it. And now I've left the meeting. Within the next 30 seconds, that meeting ID will be completely null and void, and no one else will be able to access that meeting ID. Okay, so now I've gone through and I've completed that meeting. I have another meeting scheduled for my next student, and I'm going to repeat the same exact process. So I'll just run through this quickly again for you. I'm going to go up here to the plus sign. I go to meet.google.com. I select join or start a meeting. I enter in my next student's name, who is going to be Corey. Okay, and then I am going to click continue. Okay, so now I'm a little ahead of the game here. Okay, I'm ready to go, but I'm not actually ready to join, and I'm not ready to invite that student. So no one else can see this but me. I can get up, I can make myself a sandwich, I can get a snack, I can stretch my legs, do all those things that you need to do to kind of get prepared for that next meeting. And then when you are ready, you click join now. Now it is live, but no one else has the link except for you. So no one can get into this space until we do this. We click add people. We're going to I'm going to type in Corey's address here. It's a little slow right now just because of the fact that I'm trying to do simultaneous Google Meets. And I also spelled Corey's name wrong. Sorry. Okay, so now that that's there, we have Corey Wiest is listed. I can send him the email and then he will get the invitation now. So now this meeting link is open. I'm muting myself again so that we don't get feedback. I'm going up to the top and clicking on the people so that I could monitor when he enters and who else may join us. Now Corey is here. Hi Corey. We conduct our meeting. When we're finished, I go in here. I remove him if he doesn't remove himself first. Okay, the meeting's over. I'm sure that I'm the last person here. I close out this browser tab, or I could also do this, come down here and choose to hang up and leave the call. So I'll demonstrate that right now. And now you can see that I've left the meeting and I won't be able to rejoin within 30 seconds. The meeting link will disappear. Okay, so because of that fact, that's why we want to complete this process for every student as we move forward, because we want to make sure that we're not using similar IDs, because we don't want other students to be able to access the meeting at any point in time. You want a fresh Google Meet set up with that student's initials each time you have an appointment. Okay, Tyler, did I miss anything? Usually we do a tag team, but I kind of just plowed right through it. So
no, that's totally okay. Yeah, like Melissa was saying, it's really important that you do it this way. Now, we all know that we can do calendar. We all know that we're probably going to create calendar events to keep ourselves kind of organized when we schedule these different meetings with students. And that's totally cool. The thing is, and the thing to keep in mind when you do that, is to make sure that you do not create a Google Meet link in that calendar event, especially if you try to invite the student to the calendar event. We probably recommend you not invite students to calendar invitations because it automatically generates that Meet link, and we don't want that. The reason why you have to go through the way that Melissa showed you is because it gives you a lot more control over that meeting. If you were to use the calendar method and create a calendar event and have them join using that calendar event Google Meet code, first of all, that code is always active. A student can join that at any time with or without you. And you also do not have control over removing people from the event, from the Meet link if people were to join. So it's really important that you follow the directions this way to make sure that you have that control.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you bringing that up because I just want to give you another tip. And Kathleen, I do see, and thank you for your question. So I will answer that in a moment. I just wanted to give you guys another tip on how you can keep yourself organized through calendar, but not generate a Meet link. Okay. So just bear with me as we go through this. So now also just don't pay attention to all that's going on, because yes, it gives me anxiety too, and I might need a counseling session every time I look at it. So let's just come up here to, I'm going to make believe, obviously I wouldn't invite a student at 3 a.m., but let's look at some blank space. Okay. So if this is my meeting set up for this student, now I live by my Google Calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it's pretty much, I'm pretty much not going to remember that it needs to happen, including, you know, family events and stuff like that. This is like my thing. So if you use Google Calendar, I would suggest doing this just to keep yourself organized. If you have a separate way that you are setting up your schedules to keep organized, whatever works for you, this is just a suggestion. And it's very important that if you're using this, you follow it this way. Okay, so I clicked, and I'll do it again just to demonstrate. I clicked in a blank space, okay? I could also click create up here, okay? So I'm just gonna go right here to this, this area. And before I put anything in, I wanna go to more options, okay? Now, I want to put in here that my next meeting is going to be with Glenn. So I'm going to put Glenn's initials here. You can give yourself more identifiable information. It's your calendar. Nobody else can see it unless you've shared it. So that's fine. So maybe I'll just include Glenn's last name. Okay, punctuation is here fine. Here is fine. It just doesn't like it on the Meet side. Okay, now here's what's really important. If I was to invite somebody here, then it's automatically going to generate a link. So I'm going to demonstrate this right now, because this is not, you do not want to add any guests. I just want you to see what happens. Okay, as soon as I click on Glenn, watch what happens over here. It automatically generated a Meet link, which I do not want. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to remove Glenn. And I'm going to do this all over again and show you the exact right way we want to do this. So I'm going to discard that one, and I'm going to go into the same spot and do it the way you will need to do it just to keep yourself organized. Okay, so I'm going here again. I put nothing on this screen. I go to more options. I type in Glenn's name. I skip this, okay? And I don't put anything else in. Maybe I plan to meet with him for a half hour, so I change this here, all right? Maybe I'm scheduling repeating meetings with him at this time every week, every other week. What I would do is I would click on here, this drop-down arrow under does not repeat, and I would say custom. I would select custom. This then gives me the ability to repeat once a week or twice a week on the day that is selected. So if I'm repeating once a week, but on these 2 days, okay, I can do that. Or I can just say this is once a week on Fridays, until I can put in a date that ends on, let's just say we're going to use May 15th as our stop point, because that is when we will hopefully get official guidance from the governor about whether or not we can return to school. So I'm doing this because I know I have a regular meeting set up every week on Friday, same time, and it's going to end at that point. If I need to continue to schedule that, I can. So I'll just click done. Again, I'm not adding the student as a guest, not adding anybody else as a guest. This is just for me to keep organized in my calendar. And then I make sure that this does not say that there's a meeting link enabled. And I just click save. So now we'll see that this meeting here for Glenn is listed on this Friday that I set up. I'll jump to next week. There it is again on the 8th. I should see it one more time next week on the 15th. And then since I decided to stop that meeting at this hard stop date, if I go to the next meeting, it should not, next week, it should not be there, and it is not. Okay, so it's just a nice way for you to keep organized. That being said, at 5 to 4 or right 5 to 10 minutes before I'm ready to start that meeting, I continue to do the same process. Open up a new tab, go to meet.google.com and invite that student at that point, following the same procedure we've been practicing. So to answer, so what questions do we have about that?
And because we're not relying on that Google Calendar invitation, that basically means that you would correspond with the student on scheduling that meeting just via regular email. So you would reach out to them and say, hey, what time is good for you? You would get that information, and then you would just add it to your personal calendar without inviting them, the student, again, just so we don't run the risk of creating that Google Meet link.
And if you as a department wanted to create a generic kind of like a fill-in for the email where you would just say, your meeting has been scheduled for this time and this day, a few minutes prior to the start of the meeting, please check your email for an invitation from me to join our Google Meet. And that's it. And then you can kind of just copy and paste and give that out to each student. Any other questions about that so far before I take the question about Google Meets versus the phone call? Okay. So if you're not using video, is there a benefit or reason for using Google Meet versus the *67 phone call? So the benefit is that you're going through the computer and the Google Meet platform, and it is generating a random number. When you use *67, it comes up as restricted, and some people are very apprehensive of answering any calls that come from unrestricted numbers, just because of the history of those robocalls and things like that. So chances are that a *67 phone call will most likely be denied or automatically blocked by the cell phone if they have enabled applications to automatically dismiss those types of phone calls and kind of do a do not disturb. So by doing it through the Google phone, the Google Meet phone option, it does generate a number, and it'll be a little more likely for them to pick up.
Yeah, we on the tech department actually run into the *67 number being blocked more often than not. So it definitely it works sometimes, but I definitely would not recommend relying on it, and I would definitely go the Google Meet route because, again, more often than not, that *67 phone call, when we try to place it, is blocked, and we end up using another methodology anyway.
So yeah, it does become a time saver for you. The other thing is that, like Tyler said, when we set up our hotline through Google Meet / Google Voice, we are using this platform. So we've tested it, so we know that it works. That if you are just using the phone call option through Google Meet, it's most of the time successful for us, as opposed to the *67. Has Google Meet now replaced Google Hangout? Great question. So yes, and I get caught up on it all the time because it was Google Hangouts, and then it's Google Meets, and now it's Hangout Meets. So we're just I'm trying to be very conscious of, yes, staying with the language that it's Google Meet, but it's basically the same thing. It's, yeah, I don't know why they did that. Yeah. Okay, what other questions, concerns do you guys have? Maybe need some time to, as Val says, marinate on it a little bit and then decide if you need some additional support.
Melissa, Jeremy had a question posted in there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Will we be able to invite students using group lists created in Google?
So yes, if you have group meetings, I would suggest, and I can demonstrate, you can do it this way, or you can create a Google Classroom if you have consistent meetings with the same group of students. Now, the advantage of doing it that way, so let's say you have a group that you meet with regularly, and that you intend for that group to be consistent from now until the end of the year, whether we go back to school or not. In that case, I would suggest making a Google Classroom for that group, because then it makes it very easy for you to email all of the students in that group in one click of the mouse. And it also gives you the ability to, instead of emailing students individually with resources, you could post resources that are specific to that group. Let's say I have a student group that I've been meeting with because they're struggling with divorce, and I want to create a Google Classroom so that students that are in that group would have access to resources, whether it be links to videos that might be helpful, PDF documents, self-help tips to go through things, then that would be a great use for Google Classroom. Jeremy, specific to you, like if you are interacting with the Solace students regularly or the medical sciences students regularly, I think Google Classroom would be a great option for you, because then you have all of the students in one space. They're familiar with using it in their other classes. And again, it gives you that ability to send out consistent resources and even timelines or deadlines or assignments to students based on being in that Google Classroom. And then when you do that, the students that have that Google Classroom Meet link that you will generate, then they would always use that same Meet link. So for groups, it's a one and done kind of thing. You set up your classroom, and I'll demonstrate that if you guys want to, for anybody who wants to stay on to see that. You generate that link once, you let students know when they're going to meet in that small group, and then you just have to add it to your calendar so that you know when to log in, and just remind the students when to log in. If you did that through Google Classroom as a post, they would just see it in their stream, and they would know that they had that meeting scheduled. So it makes it a little bit more user friendly on your end because it's less steps. The only reason that we're doing it this way, by going to meet.google.com and inviting students individually, is to save you the steps of having to create an individual classroom for every single student you meet with. That would just be way too much, but I highly suggest it for any small groups that you have. So also Google Meet with videos goes through their email, right? Even if you don't use video, so they don't even need their phone. So yeah, so there's two ways that you can invite students. So let me just demonstrate this real quick. If you, in case you have to invite students through a phone, for whatever reason, maybe they're having technology issues. When you go to meet.google.com and you select to join or start a meeting, you would follow the same process. So this time I'm going to invite Kevin Harris, and I'll click continue. You still have the option, if you're choosing not to use video, to have your video off or have the students' video off, or just join and use the phone for audio. So then you can have a call me option where you put in the number of the student and it's going to call, or the dial-in option where you provide that number with a PIN to that student or to that parent. So that is an option as well if you were just going to use the phone and not the video. Now you can also choose the Join Now button, and you can invite students through either their email, or you can also generate that phone number call there as well if a cell phone is the only thing that's available at that point. If you use the phone number option, they will not have the video option. You still do. If you invite through their email address, which is recommended for students that are not having technology issues in grades 2 through 12, we would type in that person's email, and they can still choose to just join through the audio. So even though I would be inviting Kevin, he could choose not to turn on his camera, just like we can choose not to turn on the camera, and then we would only see their icon that they've selected for their account. Now that being said, as guidance counselors, if you could do me a favor, please look at their icons, and if it's inappropriate in any way, please ask them to change it. Sometimes, you know, kids, they pick their favorite thing, and it might be a video game that might be, you know, have a violent image. These are just things that we've run into over the course of the, you know, all our years in tech. So if you notice that, just please ask them to remove it. You know, we just want to make sure that anything that is posted as an icon or a photo or social media is appropriate for school. It came up in my Point People meeting before, and they asked, what about political photos or views? And I said that just like anything else, if it is our rule of thumb for everything in education, if it is offensive, inappropriate, or impedes the learning process either in any way, please ask them to remove it and change it.
Another good thing to keep in mind, if going back to the phone call-in thing, if you were to want to share your screen during your session, know that if a student were to call in, they would not be able to see your screen. So it probably would be best, if they can, to just go with signing in the normal way on the computer and just turning their camera off, so that viewing your screen is an option if it's needed at some point. Because if you do say, hey, you could just call in, and then you're on the call and you're like, oh, wait, I wish I could show you my screen, they're not going to be able to see it. So it's probably best to do it through the web interface, because then you have the best of all the worlds. They can either look at their camera, not look at their camera, but they can still look at your screen.
And one other thing with that too, they actually do get the phone number and a PIN to dial in with that same invite. So they do have that option in the initial invite too. So you don't have to go in and actually invite them by the phone. They actually have a phone number they can dial in with a PIN number to access in the initial invite.
Thank you, guys. And this is why we don't do anything alone, because they are always there to support anything that I may miss. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Very good advice. Okay, I don't, are we still limited with the counseling services we provide, or do we still have to refer students to outside services? I'm going to direct that question to Dr. McDonald. That's not really in my wheelhouse, so I'll have her, if you have questions with specific counseling questions, please refer to Dr. McDonald, or in the high school to Jennifer, and they can support you.
I did discuss the same thing with Tanya last week, and she did confirm that we now can do counseling sessions, that the state has allowed that, considering our circumstances. So I'll confirm it again with her, but that's the conversation we had last week. I wanted to confirm for our high school counselors that it was okay, and she said yes, it is.
Melissa, can I come back to my question for a second?
Yes.
My question was actually more related. I know if it's within the IEP, technically parents have already given consent. I understand that. But if a parent has opted out specifically because they don't want to do the classroom meetings, the hours, that's what that really was sent out. But we've been working, we sent the guidelines that we had developed about counseling, and they do want to engage in counseling sessions. That's what I was kind of more asking about. If we have that email, that confirmation from a parent that they want to engage in the sessions, do we still need it to be on the opt-in list? Because they might not want to opt in for that.
No, so sorry, I misunderstood. So
I'm sorry about that.
correct. Just I would say forward the email to Dr. McDonald and your building administration, just so that they're aware of it too, and make sure that it's clear that they're still opting out for all class meetings and office hours, but they're going to continue getting services with you. And that would just kind of safeguard you from everything, so that this way everyone is aware in your building that needs to, from an administrative standpoint, that those services are being held, but that the parent is refusing to allow the student to go into the online meetings and the office hours. And you know what? That is fine. It's unfortunate in a way for the students that they'll miss that community connection, but that's the parent's choice, so that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we have the non-traditional staff have developed guidelines, so those already have been going to parents.
Right.
So they have something to kind of look over. There are still guidelines and everything else.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and we're gonna send out general guidelines too for all families, hopefully by tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. Okay, what other questions do you have? Okay, what I am going to do is I am going to share with you the Google Meet directions for counselors, just to kind of go through the process that we've talked about. There were a couple of things that we added on towards the end that are not in there. So as soon as those are finished, I'll share them out with you. And also I will, I'll get the recording of this video. I will upload it to YouTube, but it will not be public. Okay. So what that means is when I send out the directions to you, there will be a link to the YouTube video, but just like our Google Meets, only the person with the link can access the video. Okay. So if you were to share the link with someone in another district, or, someone that's outside of our district, yes, they could see it, but it would take one of us to share that out for anybody to be able to access it on YouTube. Okay. So it's not public. It's just accessible for anyone with a link. Okay, Jeremy, we can double check, but just make sure, are you using the Chrome browser? Because that is how we've enabled the nod extensions with the emojis up here at the top. So if you're using the Chrome browser and you don't see that, please put in a technology support ticket, and someone will get back to you and assist you. And since I have you here, if I could just go over the technology support ticket requests real quick. I'm trying to do that with every group that I meet. So for example, so we have the link on the homepage for technology support requests. We changed from the one system back in February. I had sent out an email. We have a new system now that was it's actually very user friendly. So thank you, Tyler. Tyler just put that link into the chat for us. Now, for example, for the past hour, both Tyler, Corey, and I have been on this meet, and so we haven't answered any emails during this time, and we continue to do PD and have these long stretches of time. Like, for example, last night when we were getting prepared for the board meeting, we weren't available from like 4 until like 8 o'clock at night. So all that time is going by where we're getting emails and we can't address them. Now, that being said, Glenn, Kevin, Andrew, and Joe are monitoring the tickets while we're on these meets and in the PDs. And so what they're doing is they're monitoring the tickets and they're getting them done while we're busy doing something else. So if a If you have sent one of us an email asking about something that is technology related, whether for yourself or for a student, anything from device issues to questions about PD that are technology related to questions about applications, Wi-Fi access for students, device issues for you or students, all of those should be put in as a ticket. Because what happens is then it's going to get routed to everyone that's available at that time to look at the ticketing system. And then they're going to be able to react and respond to that much sooner than we will if we're looking through our email inbox. The other reason that it's really important for us as a technology department is because as tickets come in, and tickets are, let's say, for a specific Chromebook or a MacBook issue or an application issue. As those things come in, they get sorted into these different folders so that we can pull reports and try to anticipate what problems we're going to run into with devices down the road based on patterns. So we're not able to do that if it's just within our email. So we'd have to search and then create a ticket. So I'm asking everyone to please try to create tickets whenever you need help. Not only will you be getting faster and better support, but you will also be really helping us try to make sure that we're looking at everything. We're anticipating things that might go wrong a week from now, 2 days from now, 2 months from now, and also making sure that we have an idea of the things that could potentially go wrong by looking at patterns with technology. So your support in supporting us in doing that by creating tickets will be super, super helpful. And we will, so the link is in the chat. And so we would really, really appreciate if you guys do that. So if there is an email that you have sent to any of us on the technology department that you've asked for specific help for yourself or students regarding technology and you haven't received a response yet, please create a ticket. And I promise you, we will be able to resolve that much faster. Please accept my apology that we haven't gotten back to you by now. Please know that it's not because we don't care or we're not working hard. We're just, we just need to change the system to make sure everything's a ticket rather than an email. Okay? All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. I don't know if I have any other comments here I need to address.
Melissa, I just sent one. If I could just chat with you, I'm totally different. I'm not a counselor, so I just had a couple of questions.
Okay, yeah, sure. If you want to, I'm going to stop the recording. If everybody else wants to go do something else, I don't know, whatever you choose, maybe eat something, then please break off, and then I can stay on here and talk to you about that. All right, everyone, thank you. Stay well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so Randy, just stay on. I'm stopping the recording now. Okay, so that